Everyone called her human husband Frail, until his sword lit up the heavens. Part 3. The inheritance of Earth-Una crawled to the edge of the breach. Her broken leg screamed in pain, but she did not care. She had to see. She had to understand. Taiho walked through space as if it were a garden path. There was no suit around him, no helmet, no protection of any kind. The vacuum of space should have killed him in seconds. The cold should have frozen his blood. The pressure difference should have burst his lungs. But he walked, step by step, as calmly as he walked through their home. He moved through the void toward the Harvester fleet. The nearest ship opened fire. A beam of dark energy shot toward Taiho. It was the same weapon that had destroyed 500 warships. It was the same weapon that had eaten planets and stars and entire civilizations. Taiho raised his sword and cut it in half. The beam split around him and continued into space, harmless. The harvesters fired again, and again, and again. 100 weapons, then 1,000, all aimed at one small human. He cut them all aside. His blade moved so fast that it left trails of golden light in the darkness. Each movement was precise and perfect. He did not waste a single motion. He did not take a single step that he did not need. Una had spent her entire life studying combat. She had learned from the greatest masters in the galaxy. She had fought enemies that were faster, stronger, and smarter than her. She had never seen anything like this. This was not fighting. This was art. This was poetry. This was the physical expression of 10,000 years of practice, 10,000 years of discipline, 10,000 years of passing knowledge from master to student. The harvesters stopped firing. They realized their weapons were useless. Instead, they sent their warriors. Thousands of them poured out of the ships. Their thin white bodies floated through space, claws glowing red, hunger driving them forward. They surrounded Taiho from every direction. A cloud of death, closing in on one small point of light. Taiho stopped walking. He stood in the center of the swarm and raised his sword above his head. For a moment, everything was still. The harvesters paused, uncertain. The ships stopped moving. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Then Taiho spoke. "Let me tell you a story," he said. His voice carried through space, somehow reaching every ear, every mind. "Let me tell you about humanity." The sword began to glow brighter. Long ago, before your kind existed, before the first star was born, there was only energy. Pure, formless, infinite. This energy became aware of itself. It became beings of pure thought, pure light. They called themselves the Wanan. The harvesters tried to attack. They rushed at him from every side. Taiho's blade moved in a circle, and they all died. Their bodies dissolved into shadow, and still he continued speaking. The Wanan traveled the universe. They watched galaxies form and die. They saw life arise on countless worlds. But they were lonely. They were too powerful. No other being could understand them, touch them, know them. More harvesters came. More harvesters died. Then they found Earth, a small planet, young and wild. On this planet lived creatures that were weak and short-lived. Their bodies broke easily. Their minds were simple. By any measure, they were insignificant. Taiho lowered his sword and began to walk again toward the heart of the fleet. But these creatures had something the Wanan had never seen before. They had souls, not just consciousness, not just awareness. Actual souls. Sparks of something that existed beyond flesh and energy. Something eternal. He passed through the swarm of harvesters like water through a net. Every creature that touched him died. The Wanan were curious. They merged with these creatures. They poured their power into human bodies, human minds, human souls. They expected to uplift humanity, to make them gods. He reached the first ship. His sword touched its hull, and a line of golden light spread across the surface. Instead, something unexpected happened. The human soul changed the one in power. It limited it, contained it, but also refined it, made it something new, something that had never existed before. The ship exploded, not with fire, but with light. Pure, clean, golden light that spread out in all directions. The Wanin became human. They forgot their old existence. They lived and died as mortals, generation after generation. But the power remained, sleeping in human blood, waiting to be awakened. Taiho moved to the next ship. Some of us remember. Some of us were taught the old ways. We learned to wake the sleeping power. We learned to touch the fire that burns inside every human soul. Another ship died in golden light. The galaxy thinks humans are weak because our bodies are fragile. The bodies do not matter. What matters is the soul. And human souls are made of the same stuff as stars. Yuna watched from the breach of her dying ship. She watched her husband destroy warships with a touch. She watched him walk through armies like they were ghosts. She watched him reveal a truth that the universe had forgotten. And she finally understood. The Valoran Empire had visited Earth many times over the centuries. They had always found primitive creatures with primitive technology. They had classified humans as harmless and forgotten about them. But the Galactic Council had visited Earth before the Valorans. Thousands of years ago, they had sent ships to assess the planet. Those ships never returned. No one knew what happened to them. Now Yuna knew. The Council had met the Wanin. They had seen what humans truly were. And they had been so afraid that they erased all records, all memories, all evidence of what they had found. Humans were not Tier 7. Humans were not on the tier system at all. Because no one wanted to admit that a species so young, so small, so fragile, contained power that made empires tremble. Your kind has consumed 10,000 worlds, Taiho said to the harvesters. His voice was still calm, still gentle. You have eaten species that built Dyson spheres. You have devoured civilizations that transcended physical form. You think you are the greatest predators in the universe. He raised his sword, and it blazed like a sun. You have never met a human. The battle began in earnest. Taiho did not fight like a warrior. He fought like a force of nature. Ships exploded around him. Harvesters died by the thousand. His blade painted the darkness with strokes of golden fire, and everywhere the fire touched, death followed. But it was not just destruction. Yuna noticed that he was precise, careful. He destroyed weapons and engines, not entire ships. He killed warriors, not civilians. Even now, even in the heart of battle, he was holding back, because that was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to be Wanin. Power was not measured by what you could destroy. It was measured by what you chose to protect. Taiho could have ended the harvester species in seconds. He could have wiped them from existence with a single thought. But he did not, because humans did not conquer. Humans did not consume. Humans protected and taught and loved, even their enemies. Even when those enemies had killed everyone they cared about. Even when mercy was the hardest choice of all. This was the inheritance of Earth. This was the secret that the galaxy had forgotten. This was the reason why one small human with an old sword could make 10,000 ships fear him. He was not fighting for victory. He was fighting for something worth more than victory. He was fighting for the soul of the universe itself. Everyone called her human husband Frail, until his sword lit up the heavens. Part 1. The laughingstock of the imperial court. The throne room of the Valoran Empire was the largest structure in the known galaxy. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds formed beneath it. Its floors were made from compressed starlight, and its walls held the preserved bodies of every enemy the Empire had ever defeated. Commander Yuna stood in this room, and she was not afraid. She had never been afraid of anything in her life. She was 7 feet tall. Her skin was covered in black scales that could stop a blade. Her eyes glowed red in the dark, and her teeth could bite through metal. She had 4 arms, each one stronger than a steel beam. She was the youngest fleet admiral in the history of her species. She had conquered 12 star systems before her 100th birthday dot, and today she was being laughed at. "You brought a human?" Emperor Doko said from his throne. Emperor Doko said from his throne. His voice echoed through the massive room. "To be your mate?" Yuna kept her head high. "Yes, my emperor." The court exploded with laughter. Hundreds of Valoran nobles, each one a warrior in their own right, laughed until tears rolled down their scaled faces. Some of them fell to their knees. Others had to hold on to each other for support. Standing beside Yuna, a small figure waited in silence. He was Taiho, and he was human dot by Valoran standards. He was tiny. He stood only 5 feet and 10 inches tall. His skin was soft and brown, without a single scale. His eyes were dark and gentle. He had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons of any kind. He wore simple gray robes and carried an old sword at his hip. "Look at it," a noble named Hana said loudly. "It looks like a child. A sick child. Can it even speak?" Another noble asked. "Or does it just make noises?" Taiho said nothing. He simply stood beside his wife, his hands folded in front of him, his face calm and peaceful. This made the court laugh even harder. Yuna's 4 hands tightened into fists. She wanted to kill every single one of them. She could do it too. She was faster than all of them, stronger than most of them. But she was also a soldier, and soldiers followed rules. "My love," Taiho said softly, so only she could hear. "It does not matter what they think." "They are insulting you," Yuna whispered back. "Words are just sounds," Taiho replied. "The wind makes sounds too. I do not get angry at the wind." Yuna looked down at her husband. Even now, even surrounded by creatures that could tear him apart with one hand, he was calm. His heartbeat was steady. His breathing was slow. He looked at the laughing nobles the same way he looked at flowers in a garden. She remembered the first time she saw him dot. It was 3 years ago. On Earth, the Valoran Empire had sent a small team to study the planet. Humans were classified as a Tier 7 species. This was the lowest ranking possible. It meant they were barely intelligent, barely worth noticing. The study was supposed to be simple. Yuna had been part of the security team. One night, she wandered away from the base camp. She found a small wooden building in the mountains. Inside, a man was practicing with a sword. She watched him for 3 hours. She could not look away. His movements were like water. His blade caught the moonlight and turned it into silver rivers. He moved without sound, without effort, as if gravity did not apply to him. When he finally stopped, she realized she had been holding her breath. "You can come in," he said without turning around. "I know you have been watching." Yuna had never been caught before. By anyone, ever that she entered the building. Up close, the man was even smaller than she had thought. His body was thin. His arms were like sticks compared to hers. But his eyes were deep and old, much older than his face. "What are you?" she asked. "Just a man," he replied. "What are you?" "A conqueror," she said. "A destroyer of worlds." He smiled at this. Not a mocking smile, but a sad one. That sounds lonely. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever looked at her titles and her power and seen loneliness. She did not know how to respond. They talked until sunrise. He told her about his sword, which had been in his family for 1,000 years. He told her about his training, which had started when he was 4 years old. He told her about Earth, about its mountains and rivers and the way the seasons changed. She told him about the stars, about the endless wars, about the emptiness she felt after every victory. "Why do you fight?" he asked. "Because I am strong," she said. "That is not a reason," he replied. "That is just a fact." By the time she returned to her ship, Yuna knew she would come back. And she did. Again and again, for 2 years, she found excuses to visit Earth. She learned his language. She learned his customs. She learned the way he laughed, which was rare, and the way he cried, which was rarer. When she finally asked him to come with her, to be her mate, he did not hesitate. "I have been waiting for you to ask," he said. Now they stood in the throne room of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and everyone was laughing at them. The nobles made jokes about how Yuna would break her human in bed. They made bets on how long he would survive. They called him a pet, a toy, a temporary amusement. Ambassador Kira, a visiting dignitary from a rival nation, walked up to Taiho and leaned down to look at him. "Does it do tricks?" She asked Yuna. "Can you make it roll over?" Taiho looked up at the ambassador. She was 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin like blue metal. She could crush his skull with 2 fingers. "I can make tea," Taiho said politely. "Would you like some?" The court laughed again. But Yuna noticed something strange. Ambassador Kira had stepped back. Her body language had changed. For just a moment, for just a heartbeat, there was something in her eyes. Fear. Then it was gone. And she was laughing with everyone else. That night, in their private chambers, Yuna asked her husband about it. "What did Ambassador Kira see?" "When she looked at you?" Taiho was preparing tea with careful, practiced movements. He did not answer immediately. "Some beings," he finally said, "can sense what others cannot. She looked at my soul instead of my body. And what did she see?" Taiho poured the tea. His hands were steady and sure. "She saw what humans truly are," he said. "She saw why the Galactic Council stopped sending ships to Earth. She saw why our planet has never been conquered, even though we seem so weak." Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. "What are humans, Taiho?" "What are you?" He handed her a cup of tea and smiled his gentle, patient smile. "My love," he said, "I really hope you never have to find out." Everyone called her human husband Frail, until his sword lit up the heavens Part 2, the day the sky burned. 6 months passed after that day in the throne room. Life continued. The nobles kept laughing. Taiho kept making tea. Yuna kept commanding fleets and winning battles. Then the harvesters came. No one knew where they came from. Old stories spoke of them, but those stories were thousands of years old. Most people thought they were myths, fairy tales to scare children, legends from a darker age. The legends dropped out of hyperspace. With 10,000 ships, Yuna was on the bridge of her flagship, the Unbroken Claw, when the alarm went off. She looked at the screen and felt her blood turn cold. The harvester ships were massive. Each one was the size of a small moon. They moved through space like a swarm of insects, blocking out the stars. Their hulls were made of something that seemed to absorb light. Looking at them hurt the eyes. "All ships," Yuna commanded, her voice steady despite her fear. "Battle formation. Prepare for engagement." The Valoran fleet was the greatest military force in the known galaxy. They had 500 warships. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had warriors who had never known defeat. The battle lasted 6 hours. 6 hours for all of it to burn. The harvester weapons were unlike anything Yuna had ever seen. They did not just destroy ships. They ate them. Beams of dark energy would touch a vessel, and the vessel would simply disappear. Not explode. Not break apart. Just vanish, as if it had never existed. By the 3rd hour, half the fleet was gone. By the 5th hour, only 12 ships remained. By the 6th hour, the Unbroken Claw was the last one fighting. Yuna stood on the bridge, her body covered in blood. The ship was falling apart around her. Fires burned in every corridor. The hull had been torn open in 17 places. Most of her crew was dead, but she kept fighting. "Target their lead ship," she ordered. "All remaining power to weapons." The unbroken claw fired everything it had left. The blast would have destroyed a planet. It hit the harvester ship and did nothing. The dark hull absorbed the energy like a sponge, absorbing water. Then the boarding parties came. They cut through the hull with claws that glowed red hot. Hundreds of them poured into the ship. Una saw them for the first time and understood why the old stories called them nightmares. They were tall, taller than Valorans. Their bodies were thin and wrong, with too many joints in their limbs. Their skin was pale white, stretched tight over sharp bones. They had no eyes, but they could see. They had no mouths, but they could eat, and they were hungry. Una grabbed her energy blade and charged into them. She was the greatest warrior of her generation. She had trained since birth. She had killed thousands of enemies in hundreds of battles. She killed 12 harvesters before a plasma bolt shattered her left leg. She fell to the ground, her blade spinning away from her hand. Pain exploded through her body. She tried to stand, but her leg would not work. The bone was broken in 3 places. She could see white through the torn flesh. The harvesters surrounded her. They moved slowly, savoring the moment. Their thin bodies swayed like grass in the wind. She could feel their hunger reaching out to her, touching her mind, tasting her fear. One of them leaned down. Where its face should have been, there was only smooth white skin. But somehow, it smiled. Then she heard the sound. It was a single note, clear and pure, like a bell ringing across an infinite distance. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. The harvesters stopped moving. For the first time since the battle began, they seemed uncertain. Taiho stepped out of the smoke. He had been hiding in their quarters during the battle. Una had ordered him to stay there, to stay safe. She had thought he was still there, waiting for her, probably dead by now. But here he was. He had removed his gray robes. Underneath, his body was covered in scars. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, layered over each other like a map of pain. Some were old and faded. Some looked fresh. They covered his chest, his arms, his back, every inch of him. Una stared at her husband. In 3 years, she had never seen him without his robes. She had never known about the scars. But it was his eyes that made her breath stop. They were burning, not glowing, not shining, but actually burning. White fire poured from his eye sockets, leaving trails in the air like ribbons of light. His gentle brown eyes were gone. In their place was something ancient and terrible. The old sword was in his hand, and it was awake. Light erupted from the blade. Not the blue light of technology or the red light of plasma. This was something else. Something older than stars, older than planets, older than the universe itself. The metal sang with a sound that made reality tremble. The harvesters backed away from him. These creatures that had destroyed 500 warships in 6 hours. These monsters that had eaten civilizations across 1,000,000 years. They stepped back from one small human with an old sword. "I am Taiho," the human said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the broken ship like thunder. "Last of the Wanan. Keeper of the eternal flame. Guardian of the third way." He raised his sword, and the light grew brighter. "You have come to my wife's ship. You have hurt my wife's people. You have threatened my wife's life." The blade began to hum. The sound was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "This," Taiho said softly, "was a mistake." He moved. Una had watched him practice with his sword many times. She had always thought he was skilled for a human. Quick for a human. Graceful for a human. She understood now that he had been holding back. He'd been moving slowly, like an adult playing with a child. This was his true speed. She could not see him. She could only see the light, It danced through the harvesters like a golden wind, and everywhere it touched, they died. Not just died, they unraveled. Their bodies came apart into threads of shadow that dissolved into nothing. 30 harvesters. 30 creatures that had killed her entire crew, destroyed her entire fleet, conquered half the galaxy. They were gone in 11 seconds. Taiho stood alone in the corridor, surrounded by fading wisps of darkness. His sword still blazed with impossible light. His eyes still burned with white fire. He turned to look at Yuna, and for just a moment, she saw her husband. The gentleman who made tea and talked about flowers. The patient soul who never got angry at insults. "I'm sorry," he said. "I did not want you to see this." Then he walked toward the breach in the hull, toward the open void of space, toward the 10,000 ships that waited outside. "Taiho," Yuna called out, her voice cracking with pain and confusion. "What are you? What are you going to do?" He paused at the edge of the breach. Beyond him, she could see the harvester fleet, their dark ships blotting out the stars. An endless army of death and hunger. "I am going to introduce them to humanity," Taiho said. "The real humanity. The one we have kept hidden for 10,000 years." He stepped out into space. And the sky began to burn. Everyone called her human husband Frail, until his sword lit up the heavens. Part 4. The light that cut the sky. The harvester. Overmind watched the battle from the center of the fleet. It was not a single creature. It was a collective, a network of 10 billion minds linked together across 10,000 ships. It had existed for 1,000,000 years. It had consumed civilizations that built wonders beyond imagination. It had eaten gods, and it was afraid. The small creature below was destroying everything. Ships that had never been damaged were burning. Warriors that had never known defeat were dying. Weapons that had ended star systems were failing. The Overmind reached out with its thoughts. It tried to touch the creature's mind, to understand what it was facing. What it found made it recoil in horror. The creature's mind was small. So small, its memories covered only 63 years. A heartbeat. A single breath in the Overmind's 1,000,000-year existence. But those 63 years contained more than all of the Overmind's endless eons. Joy. Pure, simple joy. The feeling of sunshine on skin. The taste of food shared with friends. The sound of laughter from people you love. Grief. Deep, terrible grief. The loss of parents who grew old and died. The death of friends who were gone too soon. The ache of memories that would never be made again. Love. Not the cold calculation of survival. Not the hunger for resources, but actual love. The warmth of holding someone close. The peace of knowing you are not alone. The willingness to give everything for another person's happiness. The Overmind had never felt these things. It had existed for 1,000,000 years, and it had never experienced a single moment of true joy, true grief, true love. The creature had experienced all of them. Every day, every hour, every moment of its brief, burning life. And within those experiences, the Overmind found something else. Something that made it understand, finally, why this small creature was winning. The creature was willing to die. Not in the way the Overmind understood death. Not as an ending to be avoided, a threat to be feared. The creature accepted death as a friend, as a companion, as the price of being alive. More than that, it was willing to die for others. The Overmind searched its 1,000,000-year memory. It could not find a single example of such a thing. Sacrifice was inefficient. Giving your existence for another was illogical. Every being in the universe fought to survive. Every being except humans. Humans ran into burning buildings to save strangers. Humans threw themselves on grenades to protect friends. Humans gave their lives for people they had never met, for causes they would never see succeed. This was insane. This was impossible. This was the most terrifying thing the Overmind had ever encountered, because it meant humans could not be defeated by normal means. You could destroy their bodies, but not their will. You could kill their loved ones, but that would only make them fight harder. You could take everything from them, and they would still find something worth dying for. The Overmind gave an order it had never given in a million years. Retreat. The harvester ships began to move. They turned away from the battle, away from the small creature with the burning sword, away from the golden light that cut through the darkness. Taiho did not let them go. He moved faster than light itself. His sword carved a path through space, and wherever it touched, ships died. Not all of them. Not even most of them. But enough. 1 in 10. 1 in 20. Enough to send a message. Enough to make the harvesters understand that they were being allowed to run. The Overmind sent a thought to Taiho. It was the first time in a Taiho. It was the first time in a Taiho. It was the first time in a 10 million years that it had communicated with prey. What do you want? The Overmind asked. Taiho stopped. He floated in space, surrounded by burning ships and dying warriors. His sword still blazed with golden light. His eyes still burned with white fire. I want you to understand, he said. Understand what? Why you lost. The Overmind waited. Around them, the battle continued, but more slowly now. The harvesters were retreating. Taiho was letting them. You consume because you are empty, Taiho said. You take and take because you have nothing inside you. You eat civilizations because you think their energy will fill the void. He lowered his sword slightly, but it never does it? A million years of consuming, and you are still hungry. You will always be hungry, because what you are missing cannot be eaten. The Overmind considered this. It searched its memories. It found that the creature was right. The hunger never stopped. No matter how much it consumed, no matter how many worlds it ate, the emptiness remained. What are we missing? The Overmind asked. Connection, Taiho said. Purpose, love, all the things that make existence worthwhile. You lost them somewhere, long ago. You forgot what it felt like to be part of something greater than yourself. He raised his sword again. I could destroy you now. I have the power. One stroke of this blade, and your entire species would cease to exist. The Overmind felt fear. Real fear. The first fear it had experienced in a million years. But I will not, Taiho continued, because that is not what humans do. We do not destroy life. We nurture it. We guide it. We give second chances. He pointed his sword at the fleeing fleet. Go. Find a world far from here. Learn to build instead of consume. Learn to create instead of destroy. Learn to love instead of hate. The Overmind did not understand. Why would you spare us? We killed your wife's people. We destroyed her fleet. We tried to kill her. Taiho smiled. It was a sad smile, full of pain and wisdom. Because mercy is not about the person receiving it, he said. It is about the person giving it. Every time I choose mercy over revenge, I become more human. Every time I choose love over hate, I honor the ancestors who gave me this power. He turned away from the fleet. If you attack again, I will destroy you. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because protecting the innocent is worth any price. Remember that. He began to float back toward the unbroken claw, toward his injured wife, toward the ruins of the battle. Behind him, the harvester fleet continued its retreat. 10,000 ships that had never known defeat, running from one small human with an old sword. The Overmind watched him go. And for the first time in a million years, it felt something other than hunger. It felt hope. somewhere in its vast collective consciousness, a tiny spark appeared. A memory from before the consuming began. A memory of what it meant to exist without hunger, without emptiness, without the endless need to devour. The creature had given it something more valuable than survival. It had given it a chance to change. Astronomers on 1,000 worlds saw what happened that day. They saw a light appear in the Korath system, a light brighter than any star. They thought a supernova had occurred. They pointed their telescopes and found something impossible. A single figure, floating in space, surrounded by the burning wreckage of 10,000 ships. A human. The report spread across the galaxy. The Valaran Empire tried to suppress them, but information cannot be contained. Within days, everyone knew. Within weeks, the story had become legend. The human who made the harvesters run. The human whose sword lit up the heavens. The husband they had called Frail. Everyone called her human husband Frail, until his sword lit up the heavens. Part 5. What came after? Teo returned to the unbroken claw and collapsed. The burning faded from his eyes. The light died in his sword. He fell to his knees beside Yuna and did not move for a long time. When he finally looked up, his face was gray and tired, older than she had ever seen it. "The fire has a cost," he said quietly. "Every time we use it, we spend years we do not have." Yuna reached out with her remaining good arms and pulled him close. She did not care about his secrets anymore. She did not care about what he was or where his power came from. She only cared that he was alive. "How much did you spend?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment. 30 years. Maybe more. Yuna's heart clenched. Humans live so briefly anyway. 80 years, sometimes 90 if they were lucky. Taiho was 63. That meant he had perhaps 20 years left now. "You should not have done that," she whispered. "I did not have a choice," he replied. "They were going to kill you. They were going to consume everything. I could not let that happen. But your life, my life is worth nothing if I spend it watching the people I love die." He took her hand in his. His grip was weak, but his eyes were firm. "This is what it means to be human, my love. We burn bright because we know we will not burn long. We love fiercely because we know it will end. We fight hard because every moment matters." The rescue ships arrived 3 hours later. They found the unbroken claw drifting in a field of debris that had once been the greatest military fleet in the galaxy. They found Commander Yuna with a shattered leg and a broken heart. They found a small human beside her, holding her hand, refusing to let go. They found no sign of the harvesters. The news spread across the empire like wildfire. The frail human, the pet, the joke of the Imperial Court, had single-handedly defeated an extinction-level threat. He had done what 500 warships could not. He had made the monsters run. Emperor Doko summoned Taiho to the throne room. It was the same room where everyone had laughed 6 months ago. But no one was laughing now. The nobles stood in silence, their heads bowed. Ambassador Kira, who had mocked Taiho so cruelly, could not meet his eyes. Taiho walked slowly, using his sword as a cane. The battle had taken more from him than just years. His body was weaker now. His hands trembled sometimes. He moved like an old man, but the fire in his eyes was still there, dim but present. "Human," the Emperor said. His voice was respectful now. "You have saved my empire. Name your reward." Taiho thought for a moment. Then he smiled his gentle, patient smile. "I want nothing for myself," he said. "But I would like you to stop classifying species by their physical strength. Humanity is not tier 7. We never were. And there may be other species like us. Species you have overlooked because they seemed weak." The Emperor nodded slowly. "It will be done." "What else?" "I want to go home," Taiho said. "Not to Earth, to wherever my wife is. She's my home now." Yuna stepped forward, her leg healed but still weak. She took her husband's hand and faced the emperor. "With your permission, my lord, I wish to resign my command. I want to spend whatever time we have left together." The court gasped. Commander Yuna was the greatest warrior of her generation. A resignation would be a tremendous loss to the empire. The emperor looked at them for a long moment. Then he smiled, something rare and precious. "Granted," he said. "You have earned your peace." They found a small moon on the edge of the empire, far from the wars and politics. They built a simple home there, nothing fancy, just enough for two people who loved each other. Taiho planted a garden. Yuna learned to cook. They watched the stars together every night, talking about everything and nothing. Visitors came sometimes. Nobles who had once mocked Taiho now came to apologize. Scientists came to study him. Philosophers came to ask him questions about life and death and power. He answered them all the same way. "Power is not the ability to destroy," he would say. "Power is the ability to choose." Every being in the universe faces the same choice: to consume or to create, to take or to give, to hate or to love. The choice you make defines who you are. One day, a young Valoran warrior came to their home. She was barely an adult, her scales still soft and pale. She had heard the stories and traveled across the galaxy to meet the human who had saved her species. "How can you forgive us?" she asked. "We laughed at you. We called you names. We treated you like an animal." Taiho poured her some tea. His hands were steadier that day. "I forgive you because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and hoping someone else dies," he said. "It does not hurt you. It only hurts me. I choose to let go of the pain and keep the lessons." "But aren't you angry that you spent your life saving people who treated you badly?" Taiho shook his head. "I did not save people to be thanked. I saved them because it was the right thing to do. Kindness is not a transaction. It is not about what you receive. It is about who you become." The young warrior thought about this for a long time. Then she bowed deeply. "I want to be like you," she said. "I want to be strong enough to be kind." Taiho smiled. "Then you already are. The wanting is the hardest part." The years passed. Taiho grew older, his hair turning white, his body becoming frail. Yuna stayed by his side every day, holding his hand, listening to his stories. On the last night, they sat in the garden together, watching the stars. "Are you afraid?" Yuna asked. Taiho shook his head. "I have lived a full life. I have loved and been loved. I have done some good in the world. What more can anyone ask for?" "But it's so short," Yuna whispered. "Her species lived for centuries." To her, Taiho's life was like a candle flame, beautiful but gone too quickly. "My love," Taiho said softly, "the length of a life does not matter. What matters is what you do with it. A candle that burns for an hour can light a room. A star that burns for 1,000,000,000 years is too far away to help anyone." He looked up at the sky, at the endless darkness scattered with points of light. "Humans live briefly, but we live fully. We pack more experience into our short years than some species do in millennia. We love harder, fight harder, dream harder, because we know we don't have forever." He turned to look at his wife, his eyes full of warmth and peace. "That is the secret the galaxy never understood. Our mortality is not our weakness. It is our greatest strength. It forces us to matter. It forces us to make every moment count." Yuna held him close as his breathing slowed. She felt his heart beating against her chest, steady and calm. "I love you," she said. "I know," he replied. "And that is enough. That has always been enough." He closed his eyes and was gone. The galaxy mourned a hero. But Yuna did not mourn for long. She knew that Taiho would not want her to be sad. He would want her to live, to love, to make her moments count just as he had. She kept the garden growing. She answered visitors' questions. She told Taiho's story to anyone who would listen. And on clear nights, she would look up at the stars and smile, because somewhere out there, she knew, a part of Taiho still burned. Not the fire of the Wanin, not the power that lit the heavens, but something simpler, something more important. The memory of a kind man who chose love over hate. The legacy of a gentle soul who saved the galaxy, not with anger, but with mercy. The story of a human who proved that true strength has nothing to do with muscle or scales or weapons. True strength is the courage to be kind in a universe that often rewards cruelty. True strength is the wisdom to forgive those who hurt you. True strength is the love that burns brightest in the smallest, briefest, most fragile of lives. The story spread across the galaxy. It was told in every language, on every world. Parents told it to their children. Teachers told it to their students. Soldiers told it to each other before battle. The story of the human they called Frail. The story of the sword that lit the heavens. The story of what it truly means to be strong. And in the end, that is all any of us can hope for. Not to live forever, but to matter while we live.